Hello there. Well, the 2020 election season is at a critical point, and a lot is at stake for people in both parties. For those of us who are interested in health literacy solutions, the question is, what role can we play? Some people may find politics confusing and frustrating, and they may even decide to opt out and not vote. Well, part of our job is to make things easier. The question is, how can we make it easier for people to get involved and to vote? How can we possibly make it even fun to do? Well, stick with me and let's see. So we're talking about saving lives, voting. What about health literacy? What's the connection? Well, let me explain. When we're talking about health literacy, we're basically talking about your ability to figure out what's needed for you and others to stay alive and as well as possible. But we know that there's some things that can make this hard to do. For example, in everyday life, we know that consuming too much sugar, salt, fat, drinking too much booze, laying out in the sun too long, not getting enough physical activity, even riding around on a bike without wearing a helmet. These things can make it hard to stay alive and well in everyday life, even though some of these things are kind of tempting, all right? But it makes it hard. And then there are issues of health inequities. And for those of you who are in the health literacy community, you know what I'm talking about. And there are many of them. And these are things that definitely make it hard to stay alive and well in everyday life. But what about in the age of COVID-19, this pandemic? What kind of things make it hard to stay alive and well? Well, not physical distancing, not wearing a face mask, not washing your hands, mishandling household cleaners. Apparently calls to poison control centers are way up, and having to live or work among other people in a close environment. Some people live with many other people. That makes it hard to physical distance. Group homes, nursing homes, prisons, of course, and then people where people work. People who work in grocery stores are surrounded by many people. People who work in hospitals trying to save our lives are as well. That can make it difficult. So every year, people suffer and die. This is part of life. We know this, difficult as it is. But in 2020, we've lost so many more, thousands and thousands of people, our loved ones. And this has been really tragic. So surviving in everyday life requires a good degree of health literacy. We know this, all right? But I submit that surviving in the age of COVID-19 requires health literacy on steroids. So let me give you a definition of health literacy on what I consider to be a reasonable dose of steroids. In 2005, Chris Sarkadoulis, Andrew Pleasant, and David Greer, that team, published an article entitled Understanding Health Literacy, an Expanded Model, Expanded. Now, there are many useful definitions of health literacy. We have at least 20. There suggests that becoming functionally health literate actually requires some key abilities in 4 central domains, additional kinds of literacy, if you will, and they include the following. Fundamental literacy, and that most of us are familiar with. We're talking about reading, writing, computing, numeracy skills, and so forth, all right? Then they talked about science literacy. I think probably we need to talk more about that at some point. Same thing with cultural literacy. But for now, let's focus on what they said about civic literacy as being a requirement for being really functionally health literate. So this civic literacy, what is that? Here's what they said. Civic literacy refers to abilities that enable citizens to become aware of public issues. In other words, you're paying attention, you know what's going on, and to become involved in the decision-making process, actually become involved. And they listed 3 requirements to achieve some degree of what they've referred to as civic literacy, and here they are. 1, an awareness that individual health decisions can impact public health. So for example, should I wear a face mask to protect other people or not? Some people feel you should, Some people feel you shouldn't, okay? Some level of media literacy. For example, should I get my information from this source of news or for that source of news? Well, depending on where you're getting your information, it's going to affect the way you see the world, and it's going to affect the things that you do. In a pandemic, that may be a life and death kind of perspective and decision, okay? So where you get your news counts. That requires media literacy. The third thing they mentioned was a knowledge of civic and governmental processes. Now, that's a tall order because it's a complex issue. But here's one example this year. Who should I vote for? That's a big question, all right? In order to be able to decide that, a person would need to become aware of public issues and become involved in the decision-making process. Now, one party says, I'm for this. Another party says, I'm for that. All right, that's what their leaders are saying. And here are the questions that some of us are asking. How will you help to keep us alive? And how will you help to keep us well? If we're in the Health Literacy Solutions Center, these are the questions we want to know. We want solutions. Each party has an answer. Okay? Here's another example of having a knowledge of civic and governmental processes. What do I need to do so that I can safely vote by mail in 2020? Safely. Okay? That's a huge question that a lot of us are facing right now. Okay? So in this expanded way of thinking of health literacy, this is basically a paradigm shift. And this is why I am saying it, even for those of you who have heard me say it before. It points out the fact that in order to have some personal control over your ability to stay alive and as well as possible, you need some degree of the following things: fundamental literacy, but that's not all. Some science literacy, some degree of cultural literacy, and certainly some degree of civic literacy. Civic literacy, okay? And that includes being an informed and active voter. So that's what health literacy has to do with voting. And I think we need to keep that in mind, not only for this election year, but going forward, because there are many other things that we need to do besides vote. But we'll talk about that at another point. So who is all of this for? By now, I think you've figured out it's for you. And it's for everyone and anyone you can help to vote early, vote safely, and vote successfully in the big 2020 election that is getting nearer by the day, okay? Because voting in 2020 may be so hard that some people may give up and just decide not to vote. The Postal Service is having a hard time delivering mail even now. When ballots start coming in, it'll be even harder, okay? But if you figure out how to manage all of these obstacles, you can help others to do so as well. And that's what I'm inviting us to do. So let's get ready to vote and to win, because one side's going to win. One side's going to win. It's time to pick a side and then stick together. Maybe we can even make it fun doing so. So give this some thought. This is no time to opt out, as some people are actually in the process of doing. We're in the midst of a viral pandemic. That's a health issue. Thousands of people are losing their lives. If we can get excited about who wins the World Series, the NBA championship, and the Super Bowl, can we not get revved up about this upcoming election when actual lives are at stake? The playoff teams play to win. Stolen bases, pass interceptions, and teamwork are all part of the winning strategy. Now, I just want to point out that stolen bases, that's fine in baseball. We're not talking about stealing elections. And sometimes that might be the case, depending on what the situation is. That's not fair when it comes to voting, only in baseball. So we'll need some teamwork. There's a blue team and there's a red team. Each team has a captain, all right? The blue team, those are the Democrats. The red team, those are the Republicans. So stick with me here. For the 2020 presidential election Super Bowl. Question is, which team are you rooting for? Well, it depends on what you value. The blue side, you've got progressive values. That's what we call them. On the red side, we call them conservative values. Now, there's some people who are neither way on the left or way on the right, way towards conservative or way towards the conservative values or progressive values. There's some people who have a mixture and they may be kind of purple in between, all right? But it depends on what you value, which team you pick, because there are really only 2 teams this year, all right? So here's one of many possible examples. We're talking about health literacy, health equity, getting solutions. If you believe that promoting health equity is important, for example, you may or may not, you have to decide which team you think will work to see that everyone has an equal chance of staying alive and as well as possible. And it's really up to you, how you see things, which you decide. So once you decide that, you have to figure out how to win. What does your team need in order to win? The answer is your team needs 270 points. And these points are actually electoral college votes, ECVs for short, okay? Nobody ever calls them ECVs. And usually people don't call them points, but for this Super Bowl election, let's call them points. So you have the blue team, the US Democrats, and you have the red team, the US Republicans, okay? So who can help your team to win? Let's take a look. If you're voting for the blue team, you have to rely on the blue state voters, all right? I'll tell you a little bit about those. The majority of folks in those states vote for the blue team. So all of those states' points tend to go blue. If you're rooting for the red team, you have to pay attention to the red state voters. Why? Because the majority of folks in those states tend to vote for the red team. So all of those teams' points and all of those states' points go red. So who else can help your team win? This is where you have to pay attention to the purple swing state voters. Why? Because in those states, the votes are almost evenly split. Many people vote for the blue team, and many people vote for the red team. And so those votes can go either way. However, if the majority of people in any given swing state vote for the blue team, then all of those states' points go blue. And if the majority, on the other hand, vote for the red team, then all of those states' points go red. It all depends on what the majority decides, because the winner, because of the majority, takes all. So there are 15 blue state players plus the District of Columbia, which is in a state actually. There are 20 red state players, and there are 15 swing state players. Now these first 6, Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, are thought to be the closest. That's where the majority is very, very, very close. And the votes are almost evenly split, and they could either go red or blue. It really depends on how people vote. Those are the closest 6. But then there are another 9 that are also quite close. So you have to pay attention to these 15 swing state voters, all right? So here's the lineup. Which tend to be the Republican states. Let's look at them a little more closely. You have Alabama, you have Alaska, you have Arkansas, all the way down to Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming, all right? And if you notice the numbers by each state will has a certain number of points to offer. Alabama has 9, Alaska has 3, Arkansas has 6, and so forth, all right? So the question is, do you live or vote in a Republican state, a red Republican state? The majority of their voters, as we said before, vote for the red team. So their points usually go to the red team. Now, if all of these Republican states, Alabama all the way down to Wyoming, vote red, then the red team is going to have a total of 126 points. See the total there? Okay, there it is. Now, if you live or vote in a red Republican state, they're going to give their 126 points to the red team. And here's the math needed for them to win. If they need 270, and they only have 126. That means they need 144 more points in order to win. Okay. Now, if you happen to be somebody who lives in Alabama, but you're really for the blue team, you still have to go out and vote. Very, very important. But it's most likely that Alabama, Alaska, and all the rest of these things are going to be, their points are probably going to the red team. All right. So let's take a look at the blue states, which tend to be the blue states or DC. Well, you have California, Connecticut, and Delaware, all the way down to Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. All right. These are the blue states. And there's DC, District of Columbia. It's number 4 there. And just like the red states, they each have a number of points to give to the election, the big Super Bowl. And the question is, do you live in one of these states? If you do, the majority of the votes in those states are probably going to go to the blue team. You should still vote if you're for the blue team. Don't just take it for granted. You got to vote. But if you live in California and you really you're for the red team, it's possible that your state is still going to go blue. All right. You still need to vote. Everybody needs to vote. And if everybody votes, you're going to get if everybody in the blue states votes, they're going to have a total of 191 points if you add them all up together. All right. Now here's the math needed for a win. If all of these states go blue, they'll have 191 points. But if they need 270 points to win, and they only have 191 points, they're going to still need 79 more points to win. Got it? All right. Now, let's take a look at the purple states. So neither the red nor the blue states have enough to win by themselves. So now we're going to have to take a look at the purple swing states. And here they are: Arizona, Colorado, Florida, all the way down to Texas, Virginia, and Wisconsin. All right. The question is, which way will these various points go? Arizona has 11 points, Colorado has 9, Florida has 29. Okay. Do you live in a purple swing state? Their points, and pay attention, can either swing to the red team or the blue team. So you want all of your state's points to swing to your team. If you live in Arizona and you are for the red team, you want all of Arizona's 11 points to go to the red team. All right, so you want all the people in Arizona who are voting for the red team to vote. Now, if you live in Arizona and you want the blue team to win, then you better get your blue team voters out, because if you get them out and they win, they are the majority, the 11 points in Arizona will go to the blue team, and so forth. Colorado, Florida, Georgia, all the way down. Okay? So the purple states are where we have to really focus our attention. And here's how it might work in a purple state, just to make it perfectly clear. The question is, one, pick any one state, a purple state. What might that state's voters want? What they want? Well, let's say, to keep it very simple, even though there are thousands of people in any state, let's pretend that only 100 people out of all of those people are eligible to vote. They're going to be the ones who decide the election. And in that purple state, 50 of those 100 people want the red team to win. And 50 of those 100 people want the blue team to win. And so when election day comes, they are voting for their team. They're saying, come on, please, please, we want you to win. All right, that's what they want. Okay. But the question is, what might voters show up and actually vote for? What you want is one thing, what you vote for is another. So let's say out of those same little 100 voters that are eligible, all 50 of the ones who want the red team to win vote for the red team. They actually go out and vote. And only 49 of those people, of the 50 who wanted the blue team to win, go out and vote for the blue team. All right? That's what happened, 50 versus 49. So drum roll, please. We're waiting for the election results. We want to know what's going to happen. Who do you think is going to win? The red team is going to win because they got the majority of votes. So people who voted for the red team can cheer and be very happy for that state. So let's see how this works. So remember what's needed to win. We're talking about 270 points. Here's the lineup with a number of points, and we have a handout if this will help. It might make watching television, listening to what's going on, who's winning, who's trailing, a lot more fun because you'll have it right in front of you and you can see it in blue and purple and red. So who's running for president? Well, you have the blue team captain and you have the red team captain. All right, and that's what a lot of people are focused on. Now, if the red team captain wins, which he could, he's going to need help from others who support red team values. He's going to need help from senators, congresspersons, and governors. All right. Now, if the senators who win are from the blue team and the congressmen are from blue team and Congress people, men and women, and the governors are from the blue team, it's going to make it harder for him to promote red team values. That's a fact, all right? Because they're not on the same team. So there's going to be some back and forth. But if this happens, it can make it a lot easier for him to promote red team values. So when you're voting for the red team, make sure not only you vote for the president, but for the senators and congresspersons and governors who are actually on the red team as well, because then you'll have a strong red team. Now, if the blue team captain wins, which he could, he's going to need some help, support from others who have the same blue team values. So if this happens, it's going to make it harder for him to promote blue team values because he's got a lot of red team people who are going to disagree with him on a lot of things, all right? But if this happens, it can make it easier for him to promote blue team values. So if you're rooting for the blue team, it's not just the president you're going to vote for. Any blue team senators, any blue team congresspersons, any blue team governors will help your president, your team captain, promote your blue team values. Okay? So that means you should be voting not just for the captain, but also for other team members as well. Not only in the general election, but any primaries that come up 2 years from now. Many people don't understand that. They go to the presidential elections, but they sit out the primaries. The next thing you know, their team captain has to work with people who are not on his team because you didn't vote to support him or her. Okay? So pick a side and try to help your team to win. And if you share the same basic values, stick with your team's captain no matter what. Even if you would have preferred another candidate, this is the candidate you have, this is the team captain you have, period, the end. If you don't like his running mate, well, that's the running mate he has, okay? Even if you don't like what he says or does, this is your team's captain. And even if you don't like all of his past record, oh, well, he said this before and he said that before, but if you share the same values and you're the voter down there at the bottom who's betwixt and between with an X and a check, here's my recommendation. Vote for your team's captain. Don't sit it out. Don't say, I'm not going to bother. You can sort out your differences once he wins. If you don't vote, if you don't bother, he's not going to win. All right. And this year it's a he. Stick together unless you're perfectly fine letting the other team to win. You can do that. So they may laugh at you. If you're good with that, that's fine. Or unless your values have become to change, which sometimes happens. Sometimes you are sort of blue and you're drifting towards the red because of things that are going on. Sometimes you're red, but you're kind of drifting towards the blue because of things that are going on. And you have to think, I was there, but where am I now? Either way, it's up to you who wins. Either the red team, Republicans, or the blue team, Democrats. It's up to you who wins. And if you decide you didn't vote just because you thought your vote didn't count, there are all kinds of other reasons why people don't vote. They didn't feel well, they couldn't get it together, out of town. But if it's just because you thought your vote didn't count and you didn't bother, then don't complain about things when it's all over. Don't complain about the death toll from the pandemic, about gun violence, about businesses failing. Some of your favorite businesses that you used to enjoy, they're going to be gone. All right. Conflicts about immigration. Is that an issue for you? You better vote. Low wages, huge student death, sick, don't have health insurance, rising racial tensions. That's a big issue. High food prices, losses due to fires and floods, farms, homes lost, tension over gender issues, high unemployment, rundown housing, and every other thing that you can think of to complain about. These are all issues that that affect each one of us. Okay? Don't complain if you don't vote. So here's a special note for the swing state players. Let's keep the focus there, because it's your vote. It is your vote that'll make the final difference. Arizona, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, wake up. Same with the other swing state voters. Be awake. Here you are. You're the stars. You're the stars this year. The rest of us are counting on you. Both parties, each party is counting on you. So do you live in a purple swing state, or do you know someone who does? Maybe you don't, but maybe you have a cousin or you have some constituents who live in a swing state. All right. Which team do you want your state's points to go to, the red or the blue? You better look at the swing states. Okay. These points, even from the smaller states, add up. Okay. New Hampshire's 4 points make a difference. Even though Florida has 29 points, Nevada's 6 points make a difference. Okay. Here are 2 things to keep in mind. We're going to wind up soon. This is a super simplification, obviously. The electoral college system voting is far more complex. But we're trying to make things simple because that's what we do, all right? We want to make voting and staying involved, knowing what's going on, we want to make it all easier to grasp and actually act on. That's what we do. That's what we're trying to do here. Another thing to keep in mind, which somebody may know, this is a more sophisticated piece of information, is that the electoral college voting system can be manipulated. You may hear something about this. Voting can be controlled away from the public eye. However, keep this in mind, because this is what you really need to know. It's much harder to trick people if one team wins big, really big. And that means people have to go out and really vote, not just a little bit, but everybody. So here's this guy saying, his sign is pointing to the left, or well, to the right actually, and he's saying, no, go left, all right? People can be tricky. Let's not fall for that, okay? Since your vote counts, and it does, how can you make sure that it actually gets counted? Well, here's the big advice. Do everything as early as possible. Even as we're speaking, even as we're talking, even as you're listening to this right now, the days, the hours, the minutes, the seconds are ticking away. So start right now. Go as fast as you can. Pay attention, focus. Even if you're trying to get to work, even if you feel totally overwhelmed, if you're traveling, you have to go someplace, you may be disabled. People understand that can definitely slow people down. All right. Even if you're busy with the kids, and this definitely can slow people down, because people right now, parents are trying to figure out what to do with school, what to do with daycare, especially single parents. It's a really tough time. Even if you're busy with school, people have gone back to college, gone back to high school. You may live away from home. What are you supposed to do? You're trying to juggle so many decisions. You still need to register and vote. Even if transportation isn't easy, not everybody has a car to zoom around and do the kinds of things that may be required. Even if you're living abroad, but you can still vote, because what happens in the United States, trust me, will affect wherever you are in the rest of the world. Believe me. And furthermore, if you're someplace else, if you care about anybody here, you need to vote, because what you decide, what you help us decide, affects us who live here. Even if you were once in prison, but can now vote. And we're going to be giving out some state information, state-by-state information on voting rights for people who've been incarcerated. And above all, even if you feel like nothing ever changes, some people feel like red, blue, what difference does it make? When it was blue, I was in bad shape. When it was red, I was in a bad shape. So why should I bother to vote? Or I wanted somebody else and they didn't get in. So why bother? I'm just going to sit this out. Even if you feel like nothing ever changes, no matter what you do, you're wrong. Because just know that things have changed. And you're going to have to give people examples of what's happening now in 2020 as opposed to 40, 50 years ago. Okay. And they can change a lot more if you join with others. It's not just about you. It's joining with others. It's about people power for positive, not negative, but positive change on either side, either party. So make sure you're properly registered to vote. Have an acceptable form of ID. We're going to be giving you information on what that is in every state. Register to vote or update your registration if needed, and confirm, even if you think you're registered, confirm your current registration just to be on the safe side. Look at what happened to one voter who's been living in one place for 30 years, no name changes and everything, okay? She went to find her registration status by name, okay? And look what happened. We're unable to match your registration for our records. Look, here it is up close. Find your registration status. We're unable to find, oh, this is frightening, okay? So here's what to do if that happens to you. If you have a name, particularly a complicated name, instead of looking at it by name, or if you tried by name and it didn't work, look here. Use a state driver's license or a state issued ID instead, something that has a number, and that varies from state to state. But try that, okay? Fill out all forms, whether registration forms or ballots, doesn't make a difference. Whatever you put your pen to, make sure you follow directions. Make sure they are complete. Make sure they are accurate. Get someone to help you or double check if you need, or double check for you if needed, because they throw out ballots where people haven't followed directions. And it'll be a shame to go through all of this and then not have your vote count. But don't be put off by this, the need to be accurate and complete. Do it anyway, do it. And then mail it in as soon as you can, or else the post office may not be able to get your ballot in on time. The post office is hurting right now. Many, many more ballots than they're used to doing, okay? So hurry, be quick, keep your fingers crossed, go as fast as you can, all right? And if you plan to vote by mail, see if you can use a secure mail-in box instead. Here's what you do. Go to Google, if you're online, and Google this, ballot drop-off boxes near me. Then that can help you to find where these ballot drop-off boxes are in your city or county. Some states have them, some states may not. Most states are trying to get them. Whether or not they do is another thing. Then drop your completed ballot off as soon as you can in one of those boxes if you're worried about the post office. Try to get help with transportation there and back. Why? Because the nearest box to you may not be someplace that you can walk, all right? So if you don't have a car, ask for help. And here, take a look down here in the bottom right-hand corner. This is what one of those may really look like. They may vary a little bit, but they don't look like regular post office boxes. Similar, but just a bit different. It is a ballot drop-off box. And if your state allows early voting at the polls, find out the dates that you can go in and vote. Again, we're going to be giving handouts to help you do that. Vote as soon as you can to avoid long lines and to increase the chance that your vote will get counted when? On time. So be prepared for delays if you prefer to vote at the polls. That's maybe your plan, all right? If your state does not allow early voting at the polls, bring the things you may need. Get one early, a portable chair or a stool, something lightweight, a beverage and a snack because you may be there just that long, a coat, an umbrella, depending on the weather, your medicine if you need it. You don't have to get out of line with your medicine if you can bring it with you with a small bottle of water maybe. Your cell phone, and if it goes dead, if you have a portable charger, bring that too. Important phone numbers, and above all, people, your patience and your determination. Help each other out in line, all right? And don't be deterred. Even if somebody tells you to get out of line and come back later, stay put, okay? Plan to help your team win big, as I said before, to avoid vote tampering. not at the electoral college level, but just at the ballot processing level. Votes can be tampered with away from the public eye. You may say, here's what I want. There you are, putting in your ballot. Somebody may say, not if I can help it. But if you say, here's what we want, if it's not just you, but it's a whole bunch of other people just like you, blue or red, doesn't matter. Next person may say, now what am I supposed to do? Makes it harder for you to trick people when your team wins big by a landslide, okay? So vote so your team wins big, your team. And if we're advising people, I just want to let you know, telling people just to go vote is like telling people to just lose weight. It can be frustrating, exhausting, and even unsuccessful. Voting's different this year. This is a new thing. And for people who have online access, there's some excellent sites, and we went through about 40 of them. These are the ones we think are the easiest to use and the most useful. There are others. Rock the Vote, vote.org, Turbo Vote, Voter Latino. These are all excellent voting support websites. Some of them are geared for young people. Rock the Vote is geared for young people. And that's a real population you really want to get out and vote. Some of them are feeling like they're not going to bother. You need to get them in there, all right? And then there's some organizations that you can support that help voters get voters engaged and motivated, sorry. Woke Vote focuses on Black people, Voter Latino and Hispanic people. Rock the Vote, Blue Institute, Circle, all focus on young people. Different things, different strokes for different folks, different things that appeal to different people at different ages. There's even one for artists, even one that considers the needs of unmarried women, which is an interesting demographic. Vote Smart tells you something about the candidates for people who want to know more about the candidates, okay? Not everybody's online. Not everybody's online, so what do? Well, keep in mind, particularly people who are out in rural areas where there's not a lot of broadband, okay? There's some people who are older and just don't want to be bothered with the internet. And some people who don't have a lot of money and they can't afford all the internet technology that's required. So how do you get word to them? Word of mouth from family. Word of mouth is great. Family, friends, coworkers, and acquaintances. They can go to city, county, or township offices. People are not helpless just because they're not online. Libraries, if they're open, houses of worship. Neighborhood newsletters and papers will give you information. All right, that of course requires some good literacy skills. Some people have it, some people don't. But even for people who don't, they have people with them who do. All right, so people are not without help. Local public access TV channels are really interesting. They'll tell you about a lot of local stuff, including voting. And local radio stations also will keep you up to date with what you need to do, and they'll cheer you on locally. And they're supposed to be nonpartisan. All right. And for people who specifically use them, here's some other things that you can do if you're not online. Food banks may have printed information, senior centers if they're open, daycare centers if they're open. They give you a lot of information printouts. Gas station convenience stores. People go in for gas. They may wander into the convenience store. There may be information there. WIC program offices, health centers, local markets and supermarkets, schools and colleges. I want to give you as many resources as possible so you can think, you won't feel like helpless. What am I supposed to do? These are things you can do, you can check on. All right, wrapping up, whether by mail or at the polls, find a way to vote. And find a way to help others vote, because in other countries, and some of us have been in those countries and know what it's like, some people yearn for what we here in the United States have taken for granted, and that's the right to vote. Our vote is our power. It is. There are many other ways to let people know what you want. You can demonstrate, you can write letters to the editor, you can do all of those things. But voting is a bottom line. It's our power, so let's use it. Especially those voters in the swing states. You've got to mobilize them. And hopefully we can help. And who is anyone? Who is we? It's anyone who is in contact with someone who's 18 years of age and older and age eligible to vote. It could be a family member, a friend, or acquaintance. Here you can pick sides. You can talk about which team you're for and so forth and why. If you work in a nonprofit or a healthcare institution, you can help people to vote. You can make it easier for them to vote. You just have to be nonpartisan about it. You can't say, my guy's better than yours. You can't do that. But I'm really calling out the people in the health literacy community and the health equity community, because we are supposed to be people who can effectively write or speak in plain language. And that is really needed, not only when it comes to talking about health issues specifically, but when it comes to talking about civic issues. If we want people to be civically literate, then we have to simplify it for them. It means we have to do this across literacy levels, across languages, because English is not the only language being spoken in this country. We have to be able to translate information across diverse perspectives, diverse cultures. You know, if you're talking to a farm worker, that's different than if you're talking to somebody who, you know, works in some computer firm. You have to be able to take those things in consideration. We can make information easy to follow, easy to access, follow, and relate to. The goal is to turn non-voters into voters, especially if you're a swing state voter and that other person, that's you or me. We should point the way. We should make it easier. Make it easier for people to vote. Let's give it a try. Why? Because our health and our lives may depend on it. One party's for this, one party's for that. And our question is, who is going to help us to stay alive? Who is going to help us to stay well? Thank you.